So, our next guest, I have the pleasure in introducing him. We both started our admin careers in Oakland Unified School District. So, starting back in 2012, 2013, he was an assistant principal at Oakland Tech, and I was an assistant principal at Skyline. I would say Josue and I, we crossed paths at our monthly secondary assistant principal district meetings if they weren't canceled. Uh, we had a chance to collaborate during the summer of 2014 because we spent an entire week co-designing ninth grade advisory lessons for the upcoming school year. And then 2017-18 hit. Josue became a co-principal at Tech. I became a co-principal at Skyline. And real talk, that's when our friendship or my friendship with Josue became admin acquaintances to admin homies, admin support system, admin shoulder to bitch and complain to. Our roles and responsibilities as co-principals at each of our school sites were quite similar. We were in charge of a lot of the big ticket items, such as the master scheduling, graduation, senior class, counselors, the budget, weekly, Wednesday PDs, the list goes on. And look, I won't speak on Josue's behalf, but personally for me, I did not have a good experience as a co-principal. So real talk, Josue was one of my lifesavers during that trying year. He was caring and understanding, he was super knowledgeable, and he was experienced in the areas I needed to bounce ideas off of because I couldn't do so with my co-principal. So, with that said, our next guest is Mr. Josue Diaz Jr. After completing his undergrad at CSU Northridge, Josue returned to Northridge to obtain his teaching credential and worked as a substitute teacher in the LA Unified School District. After completing the program and getting married to the love of his life, he moved to San Diego in 2006 and he started his first official teaching position as a middle school science teacher in Barrio Logan. Here, he learned and honed in on his skills in community organizing and confronting white supremacy and challenging the proliferation of charter schools under the false guise of, quote, school choice. In 2010, his wife led him back to her hometown with an opportunity to teach at her former high school, Oakland Tech. Oh, dang, I did not know that. Okay. A year later, he accepted the position of the CTE Academy Director of the Green Academy, where he led the curriculum for environmental chemistry and AP environmental science. In 2013, after receiving his master's in education at UC Berkeley through the PLI program, he served as Oakland Tech's assistant principal and then co-principal until 2018. Disillusioned with the inequitable policies and disingenuous anti-racist rhetoric and practices of the district, he relocated back to San Diego to serve as the human resources officer for the high school network in San Diego Unified, supporting over a third of the second largest district in California. His personal and professional experiences continue to fuel his drive to advocate and positively impact communities of color through the public education system. Sheesh. Okay. With that said, welcome, Josue. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
No. Thank you so much for the kind words. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm so excited to be here. And by the way, congratulations. Correct me if I'm wrong. You guys hit like the 50th episode mark, what you're saying?
Yeah, we did. Our last
Got it.
episode was 50.
There you go. Congratulations on that, y'all. It's all a
Thank
journey
you.
in itself. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you. Well, that intro was just helpful to kind of set the tone of just the journey you've been on so far and where you're at now. But in your words, Josue, tell us a little bit more about your educational journey. You can go as far back as you want to, if that's kind of what informed where you're at now, or just wherever you feel like this is when I started thinking about education and getting into it. Like, tell us about your educational journey.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, well, we'll take it right back, all the way back to even like kindergarten. Even I really love school when K through 2 kind of age group right there. I went to a majority Black and brown school in the San Fernando Valley. I remember my mom was a clerk at the time, so I knew everyone at the school, the administrators, the
Mm,
teachers. I had friends. I was part of it. I remember the talent shows we used to put on. It was great. I used to love that, and I have so many fond memories of that school. It wasn't until like I was tested for being gifted that my mom said, "You know what? What's best for you? We're gonna switch you. You're gonna go to another school across town." So I was bused to a magnet school, and that is kind of where I didn't realize until I was an adult where everything shifted for me. Starting third grade in a predominantly white school, I was only like one of two
mhm,
students of color at the time, and that where I used to be very like supported and just be part of the group. Now to where people making fun of me because of my clothes and my accent, and why do you kiss your dad and mom goodbye in the morning? Like it
mhm,
was just very, very different, and I never really escaped that even all the way up through like middle school. Um, I was like socially promoted in middle school. Like I was smart. I All the teachers would tell my mom like, "You were smart. You're a genius. You're awesome." But we don't know why you're not getting the grades. Amazing instructors, and they're great. I have a lot of memories from them, but my grades didn't reflect that. Um, but yeah, it just kind of was one of those things. It was like a love hate relationship with school. I just never really
mm,
fit in, especially in the gifted
mm,
programs. In high school, I remember like I used to try to escape and tell my counselors like, okay, I'll do the humanities, but all these other classes, can I please have these other classes with the at the time it was like residential students that they were called in my high school, and just because I wanted to be around folks that understood me, worked for my community
mhm,
as well. Um, so I had this love hate thing. I always wanted to be a mechanical engineer. I was a car guy as a kid. Um, and I was like the whole thing, right? My immigrant parents said, like, you got to be the three things, right? One of the three things: lawyers, engineers, doctors. So I chose engineering. Um,
mhm,
and so I applied. I remember like I just barely graduated high school. I got enough grades to apply to Cal State Northridge and got in. And even then, um, with lack of support and guidance, like I didn't know what financial aid was in my freshman year. My mom didn't know. I remember my mom was like, you just gotta do something." Like that was the whole thing. Like we didn't know what we were doing. We just
mhm,
know that you had to just keep going. Because my mom barely graduated high school. My dad didn't graduate high school, so it was just all new territory for us, right? We didn't have anyone else to kind of guide us. But I just remember that was just the thing, like just gotta keep going.
mhm,
Um, so yeah, got into CSUN. My first year, had no idea what I was doing because I didn't meet counselors. I just wanted to be an engineer. What do you do as an engineer? You take these funky classes like
mhm,
thermodynamics and this and that. And I was like, I didn't know the difference between upper level and lower
mhm,
level. Like, so I go to these
yeah.
classes, and what happens? Like, I fail.
Mhm.
Immediately. Like, I get D's and F's. I get academically disqualified my first year,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was just shocking. Like, that was just insane for me. And again, my parents just in the back of my mind, just got to find a way, no matter what.
Mhm,
Like, you just got to find a way. So I go community college, where I finally have some professors of color that kind of started explaining to me, like, yes, you're smart, but this is not completely your fault. These are some skills, and these are the things that you need to like. Go talk to this counselor that I know at CSUN. Go talk to this professor that I know at CSUN. So that really helped me out. So a year later, yeah, man, like I reapplied to go back to CSUN, and I got in, and um, it was really interesting at that time because, I was going to school full time. I was working full time because I didn't know what else to do. Like that's what you're supposed to do, right? Get a
yeah,
job, pay for
yeah.
yourself, whatever. Um, and at the time, I was working at a school. I was working at an elementary school that my mom was in the office. I think she was still an office clerk at the time. So I was a bilingual tutor, helping the kids pass the CELT test. I mean, not CELT test, sorry, passing the bilingual exam so they can get out of the bilingual
Mhm,
program.
mhm,
Um, and so when I went back to CSUN my second time, I was like, yo, you know what? Engineering's not for me, but I think I want to give it a shot at education.
mm,
And it was just one of those things because the professors I had at the community college and some professors when I went back to CSUN really had a profound impact on me, and just realizing like, we've heard this before, like I would love to help the students not go through what I went through,
right,
and
yeah.
kind of do that. And I know we hear that a lot, which is important, and it does
Mhm,
happen. So that was my drive. That was my motivation. Like I don't want the students to feel alone or not know that they have resources, and if I can be that person for them and be that connector for them, even if it's not me but connect them to the right people, then
yeah.
that's what I'll do. My parents did not like that, but of course. but that's what it was, and they had to accept it, right? So, um, went back to education. Well, sorry, got into education, and was like, you know what, I need to kind of just grow on my own. And it kind of things just led me down, this one path of just I will always take an opportunity. So if an opportunity is
Mm,
there, I will take a chance on it because what's the worst that can happen? Just go back to my previous spot. So as a substitute
yeah.
teacher, I was cool. I was like, I'm happy. I was fine. Um, there was an opportunity in San Diego all of a sudden. And this is, I will blame my wife for me moving to San Diego. I met her in San Diego. I was living in LA at the time. Uh, and, she opened my eyes to a couple of things. And when we got married, she was still graduating from UC San Diego. So I think it was like her junior year or senior year.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved down to San Diego and I got myself a job subbing for a few schools, San Diego Unified, some charter schools here or there, because I didn't know a lot, just needed to teach. And I got landed a job in Barrio Logan at King Chavez Academies as a sixth grade earth science teacher. And that was like probably the beginning of me understanding what
Mm,
education means to certain communities, but also uh, community organizing. And that was
yeah.
like such a big thing at the time. 2006 was like immigration and ICE raids
Mm-hmm.
were happening a lot in San Diego. Um, the students here, it was just probably one of the best times I've ever had
Mm,
as a teacher because uh, pros of the charter school thing and oh my god, they're all gonna record this and snip it and they were like, we're gonna blast this. No, there's a lot of innovation, right? You have a lot of room for innovation in curriculum. I
mm-hmm.
was I had to be resourceful, so I didn't understand funding and how to get stuff going, but it was a pretty small school, so I had to be very innovative with trying to get the kids to learn science
Mm-hmm.
um, and um, and earth science at that. But at the same time, like I had the opportunity to teach like PE and do
Mm,
other things. So I was like I myself was doing capoeira at the time, so I would have capoeira classes as
yeah.
PE for the students, and it
'Cause
was
you could do
great
that in a charter school.
because you could do that in a
Yeah.
charter school. Yeah, credentials, whatever, it's
Yeah,
fine.
or even
No,
that's not part of the standards. How are we gonna put that in? Yeah,
exactly. It was great, yeah. So, I mean, it was really cool experience to really just, like, get out there and expand what could be done in a school, and just that's where my
yeah.
brain was like, "Here are the rules, how can I expand upon it? Like, what
Mhm,
else what are they telling me I can't do?" Like, nobody said I
mhm,
can't teach capoeira as a PE,
mhm,
physical
mhm.
activity and all. So, that was, it was good. I spent 3 years there. The community was great. I was getting invited over for dinners all the time. We would have probably like the moms would throw birthday parties for me, which like. It was just one of those like I felt at home places.
Yeah.
Um, if I just focused in my classroom and my students in my community, I was one of 8 teachers, and the other 7 were white.
Mm.
And I remember this one time I got called into a meeting, and literally every white teacher went one by one to tell me what they did not like about me.
Oh,
You are
wow.
teaching the kids this, and you are teaching like immigration and this and that. Like they went one by one and tell them how come I'm telling the students like we're talking science, but at the same time we're talking about environmental racism and
Mm,
why is it that
mhm,
La Jolla, a rich community over here, has
mhm.
this, but Barrio Logan doesn't. So just
Yeah.
because I was telling them we're teaching the differences of stuff, yeah, it was brutal. Like that last year there was really brutal, which really got me into learning more about just even well, we say like ethnic studies, but just more community organizing and
Mhm,
what is structural racism.
mhm.
My wife was studying at UC San Diego. She was studying ethnic studies at the time, so she was getting all this stuff, and I was just getting like, oh man, I was getting armed with vocabulary and everything, so I was feeling
Yeah.
good. But it was tough, and I saw the downsides of also charter schools at the
Mm,
time where, they burn you out. Like, yes, I was a science teacher and I was a capoeira teacher who did events on the weekends. I
mhm.
also threw the movie nights every 2 weeks, for the community. We did fun stuff, but I mean, good stuff, but it burns you out at times. We
Yeah.
did. I remember like one of the funnest things we had sex ed classes, workshops for moms. So I think 6th, 7th grade, you do the sex ed classes in
Mm,
science, but we wanted the parents to know what we were teaching
mm.
them. So man, we just had the moms, and I was a babysitter outside in the hallway for some of the kids. But the moms having sex ed was the funniest thing. I don't know what was being said in there. We had some like healthcare professionals in there, but man, they were just laughing and oh, they were just having like the greatest time because they never really had that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that was those kind of things are really fun that you can do, but they do burn you out all in all. Which kind of just shot me to like public school, and I was like, you know what, I need
Mhm.
to go back to where there's there's unions, there's
Mhm.
rules. I can kind of
Mhm.
balance this stuff out. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, and I ended up going to a local school, Lincoln High School the Center for Social Justice,
Mhm.
which was a ninth grade program through the academies that, all through the state of California that happened, um, which now like what allowed me to bridge this community organizing and ethnic studies curriculum into science and be supported in that. So
Yeah.
my curriculum was like, yo, it was strong. It was great. I was innovative with things. I was there for 1 year, but I still talked to a lot of the students that I had,
Mm.
in 2009.
Yeah.
So it was just great times there. And as Christina mentioned in the intro, my wife was a graduate from Oakland Tech High School. She stayed in touch with her assistant principal. Shout out to Mr. Marty Price. He is the reason why I moved to Oakland. He said, "Hey man, hey kid, like there's an opening up here in Oakland. You should come." He got me in contact with Sheila Andahar, the principal at Oakland Tech at the time. And due to my wife being undocumented for all this time and we're being so
Mhm.
close to the border,
Mhm.
we had some unsafe situations. We're like,
Yeah.
yeah, let's go to the Bay.
Yeah.
So we're going out of here. Yeah, so we ended up in Oakland, and I got to teach at her former high school,
Oh my
which
goodness,
was it's a trip. I used to
that
hear
is
about
a
these
trip.
teachers. I used to hear about the teachers like, oh, and Miss So and So, and this is
Mhm.
the kind of teacher they were. This is the kind of teacher they were. And now I'm in teacher meetings with them, and I'm like, oh, I know a little background from y'all. Okay, I see how you guys
Mhm.
operate. I know what y'all are about now. So that was just interesting, but Marty Price was a big reason why I went over there, and he guided me to just, again, always just take the opportunity. And I learned, like, increasing your sphere of influence.
Yeah, especially because you're always thinking about like like the community and organizing, and also just what students are learning,
Hmm.
and trying to find a space where you could use that, you could do that, you could talk about those things, and were would be supported by others, or have others doing the same thing, where you weren't the odd person out. So I think,
Right.
coming to Oakland Tech or Oakland, like what was that like?
It was interesting. I learned, I learned so much in terms of what is, I hate to use this term, like the separate but equal thing.
Hmm.
Like I
Hmm.
saw that was so prevalent. Like everybody in Oakland when I first got there, it was I remember my first day teaching science at Oakland Tech, and I remember this one girl told me, "This you're teaching the dumb class," and I was teaching ninth grade conceptual physics
Hmm.
at the time. And my first grade, I was like, "Hey, what's up? I come from San Diego. I'm here, first day here, y'all. What do y'all know about the school? What am I getting myself into?" And they were real. And she said, like, "You're teaching dumb class," like, and they explained to me in
Hmm.
the first hour of me teaching at Oakland Tech the tracking at Oakland Tech High
Yeah.
School and in Oakland. They're like, well, in middle school, if you took this class, you get these classes in ninth grade, right? You took
Hmm.
um, algebra one and you take conceptual physics. And if you pass that in middle school, or if you pass whatever class in middle school, you take geometry and then you take biology. So there was already
Hmm.
tracking in the beginning of ninth grade. And I was made aware of that my first hour in
Your
Oakland.
first hour
Yeah.
by
So
a student.
by a student, yeah. So I'm
Hmm.
like, dang, y'all, like that's what they already know. This is their first hour as well as a high school student.
Right. Hmm.
So when you were teaching that conceptual physics class, were
Mhm.
you in the Paideia program? Were you a Paideia teacher?
No, 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 no. Paideia started in the 10th grade. Um,
Okay.
and so yeah, they started in the 10th grade. So in ninth grade, I had just gotten in with the small schools movement, so they had the four
Yeah,
houses at the time.
that's how you and I connected through
Hmm.
Cleo. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, that's right, through Clio, yes. Um, yeah, so I the small schools thing was great, and it was a great foundation for what we would eventually build upon when I was an assistant principal over the ninth grade. But Paideia starts in 10th grade, and Paideia was very limiting in terms of which students were even
Mm.
allowed to apply. They
Mhm.
had to have certain prerequisites, and that
Mm.
already screened out the
Yeah.
majority of Black and Brown students. Um,
Mm.
Okay, so I gotta ask because
yeah, go
we've
for it.
just always been too busy.
Hmm.
Like, so just like quick contextual background, like tech, like back in our day when Aline and I were little youngins, right? Like
Yeah.
And students at Skyline.
students at
Us,
Skyline,
Students at Skyline, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
like tech was just not the school to go
Right.
to. Like Skyline was it.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
feel me?
Yeah.
And then like if it wasn't Skyline, it was I don't know, Oakland High. I have no idea. I
I don't
like
either.
yeah, well, we were just like the top school.
Hmm.
Well, fast forward to when we were administrators there, we were no longer the top school, and like tech was like on the rise,
Mhm.
and to this day continues to be on the rise. And as of the past 2 years, um, they are no longer a Title One. They no longer, from my
Right.
understanding, they no longer receive Title One funding.
Hmm.
That school has the most white and Asian students. And I want to be very specific with the type of Asian,
Hmm.
Mhm.
not Southeast Asian,
Right.
but like
Right.
Asian. Okay, like more like Chinese and Japanese
Hmm.
and
Right.
um and so, and I feel like that rise at Tech really started with the Paideia program.
Mhm.
Like like
Yes and no,
yeah,
right?
like, well, school us on that, because
Yeah.
as
So I learned
former
a lot.
admin, we want to know, like, what was in
What?
that elixir? Like, let us know what Paideia
Yeah.
is. Like, I don't even know what that is. I mean, I know it's a program, but I don't know. Is it like a underwater basket weaving pathway? I
Great
have no
pathway. Yeah,
idea.
that's
That's
great.
what I'm saying. Like, just let us know
Yeah.
what it is.
So Paideia is a humanities program, English and social studies, integrated in blocks, right? So when you have like
Mhm, mhm.
2 hour blocks with the same teacher teaching English and social studies, you
Yeah.
can integrate, which is great. It didn't start in 2000. It started even before that. It was around like decades before we were
Mm.
administrators there, Christina.
Damn. All
And
right.
when Tech was a majority Black school, the Paideia program existed, and the Paideia program had majority Black and Brown students in there. My wife was actually a
Okay.
graduate, and this is how
Oh.
I know about Paideia. My wife was a graduate of the Paideia program back in like 99 to two, oh, well, sorry, 2000, 2003. She was there. So I knew about these teachers and I knew about the program before. And at that time, so back when it had first started, it was a great idea to say, you know what, no, Black and Brown students can achieve this level. We're
Mhm.
going to push them to that level.
Yeah.
Great. But like many diverse successful programs, they become less diverse once the word gets out.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
there was a
Mhm.
big, I forgot what year it was. There was an article written in one of the local magazines in Oakland that talked about the Paideia program. And I want, like, don't quote me on this, but I remember the gist of it was a private school within a public school. So once folks got wind of
Yeah.
that, of how successful this program was, then there was an influx of applicants, especially like the white upper class or upper middle class parents. They started grouping and like I know they have their parties. They know they like we should have these teachers and make sure our group of kids go from let's see, I forgot what elementary it was, but Claremont High School, I think was it, Claremont Middle School, and then goes to Oakland Tech, and then this is the teachers that you should take all the way up. So you have a
Mm.
lot of students being in the like Paideia program for humanities, but also in engineering for the science and CTE pathways. And that's how they stuck together. So they had their own schedule all throughout high school,
Mhm.
um, with
Mhm.
about 150 or so, I want to say, like maybe a little bit more in 10th grade, and then it goes smaller in 11th grade, leading down to max 60 students in senior year. That has like a 3 hour block. English, sorry, AP government, uh, it was AP government. There was a 3 hour block. I forgot what they did. But anyways, that's why they're so successful. They had a great teacher. The teaching was phenomenal. So I will credit that. The teaching and the Socratic method that they do, they
Mhm.
Ooh.
knew what their
Mhm.
skills were and they honed it in and they were amazing teachers at what they did.
Mm.
Uh, but unfortunately, not a lot of folks can access those teachers.
Yeah.
And they really, they stay true thinking like they're washing their hands clean on not doing more for those Black and brown students.
Mhm.
Like, hey, it's not my fault. And I would say, like, it's not my fault that these kids don't make it to me. So they kind of washed their hands in that. So when I got there, it was already this tension,
Mm.
um, because we had the gentrification of Oakland Tech
Mhm.
happen beginning in the early 2000s. And when I got there 2010, it was every
Yeah.
year there was an influx. Um,
Mhm.
and it was just really hard to balance it all.
Mhm.
Um, you hear a lot about Paideia, which again, it's a great program and all, but very exclusive. We would ask,
Yeah.
as an administrator, I would ask them like, why don't you teach other teachers? Let's expand it. If your
Mm.
program is so great, right? Like,
Mhm.
and you know you can do well with everybody, like, why can't we expand it? And even that was a challenge in itself. So A little history there, you know, good things and bad things come from it. Unfortunately, you know,
But
I will.
I got a question.
Yeah, go
Sorry.
for it.
I'm
No,
all,
go for it. Yeah, I love it.
because I've always wanted to know. So,
Yeah.
like, what was, how did students get into the BITEA program? So, okay, so I get there, I'm a ninth grader,
Yeah.
I'm in my small learning community, I'm learning about the different pathways y'all have to offer.
hmm
And I'm like, all right, cool. My first choice is Paideia. What does little ninth grader Christina need to do? Or
So
at
it's
least back in
yeah,
our day,
yeah,
back
it's
back
changed.
in 2000, whatever,
T-
17, 18.
it,
What were the requirements?
1918. But I remember, so I know that there was an essay that had to be written, and I believe
Okay,
there had to be recommendations from your teachers as well. So
recommendations.
yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
we tried to change the system a couple my last few years there, and we did make some headway. We did expand it a little bit. We did make it more of like a holistic way of entering Paideia. Um, but before that, it was very exclusionary. It was like you really had to prove um, your skill level. You know, you had to have a certain reading level. You had to do this because like I said, they read very difficult
Mhm.
literature, and went through some really deep themes. So I understand like the bar was set high, but they weren't really doing anything to prepare students to kind of meet them there,
Right.
which kind of messed up. And but the requirement level to even get in was just pretty tough. You know,
Mm,
you have a kid who's maybe he's like brilliant in ninth grade and he finally understands he wants to be a student and is great at literature and finally discovers it and would do amazing in Paideia. But unfortunately, the kid who had 8 years of experience prior to him, who understands, you know, writing and has a
right.
journalist as a parent and helping them out, there's, you know, that's not taken into account. And
Mm.
unfortunately, like diversity was not was not with a priority, I would say, for that program for many years.
You
Are
know
you
what's crazy is that I remember when it was like ninth grade, like recruiting time, right?
Oh yeah.
And like a colleague and I, Mari Sol, another former administrator at Skyline, we would go to our list of uh, feeder schools.
hmm
And I'm not going to say what school this is because I still work for the district, but it's definitely a school in the Oakland Hills. And I remember I would like 2 years in a row, the front office lady, the office manager, when I would pass out the pamphlets and I'm like, here's a list of students who have listed Skyline as one of their top 3 high schools. Could you please pass on this pamphlet and a sample course
uh,
request sheet to them so that way they could practice before they go online? This lady, I was going to say this lady didn't even want to touch my paper, like it had like a disease on it, and she was just like, she had her hands up like this and she's like, I thought I told you this last year, but I'm looking at the list that you have this year, it's the same story. If these kids don't get into tech, they're
they're
going to
gonna
go
go
to
down.
they're going to either O'Dowd, St. Joe's, or Holy Names.
hmm
And she's like, oh, and you could take
Which
off.
are private schools.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
for our
Thank you for
listeners.
for the
Oh
listeners.
yeah,
Yeah,
my
thank you
bad.
Yeah.
for putting that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then she was like, "Oh yeah, and that one you could for sure take that one out because that student's going to head Royce,
Mm.
hmm
and that's like the private school of the private school of the private schools, you know." So I was like, "Well, could you let the parents decide that?" I was like,
Yeah.
"Please, like, could you please take this?" And she said no. But me, I just dropped it on
Well,
her desk and
so
and I did my thing. So it's like it's I mean that's how like it so let's put it this way. In the past decade or so,
hmm
the neighborhood kids are going to tech because back then the neighborhood kids were not going to tech.
yeah.
hmm
Well, I have a question for you. So I'm gonna kind of shift gears a little bit because it's still about tech. Because you started teaching there,
hmm
you're seeing all these things within your first hour. A student is breaking it down for you, like the real, because that's
Yeah.
usually where we get it from. And so then, what kind of like led you into administration? I mean, I kind of like feel like it's like pulling from all that you've shared so far, but tell
Yeah.
us like kind of when did you make that shift? Like, I'm gonna be a school administrator.
It's funny, that's interesting. There were two people that I remember the conversations very clearly. An opportunity was gonna happen. So there was a vice principal at the time by the name of Sean Rake, who was moving to the East Coast.
Mhm,
Um, and I was already kind of very involved with my academy, and we were doing good things. We got an AP class started for just for the academy students, which they say couldn't be done. I'm like, no, I'm doing it, whatever. Like this is what
mhm,
we're gonna do. So I had a conversation with him, and he nudged me. He's like, hey, maybe you should think about doing an administrator. Being a CTE director, you already know a little bit about budgets, and you
mm,
know a little bit about this and that. I'm like, all right, maybe. But also, my mentor, the assistant principal for my wife, Marty Price, he also, had to talk with me. He's like, hey, I heard Sean Rake might be doing, might be leaving. You should do this. You take an opportunity to, again, increase your sphere of influence. He's like, I
mhm.
think you can do that. And again, if I didn't like it, I can always go back to being a teacher. And I
Yeah.
think that was the one thing that I've always, really pushed for my students and everybody else is like, why not take an opportunity and just see how it's like? You
Mhm,
hear stories from it. You hear this.
mhm.
I was a diehard teacher. I was like, I am a teacher for life.
Mm.
That's because that's what
Yeah, yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah.
trenches, and you're all whatever, all that stuff, right?
Oh,
That
in the
whole
trenches.
mentality, the hustle
Mhm,
mentality of it all. I was like that, and I was like, what, I'm gonna do this. I applied to be in the Principal Leadership Institute at Berkeley,
mhm.
and I got in, and I was just it. I was like, what, let me go again, just check it out for a year and see if I like it. If not, I'll go back. And honestly, the first year, it kind of just fit with my brain at the time. At the time, I'm like, it's just I was structures and operations. Like, let's get this done.
Mhm,
And I had a great mentor, advisor kind of person as an assistant principal at Tech. Her name was Teresa Williams, and I remember like in the first few months, like she would just all the operations, like she had it down, and she was veteran administrator already. But I remember she would always just tell me like, if you can't get these operations, like substitutes in the day, like make sure your classes are covered, make sure they're this and this and that, like a checklist of things that just had to be done prior to even learning.
mhm, mhm.
um like let's like just work at it, and that really fit with what I was trying to do as well. And it fit with my brain and just understanding like kind of like that, like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like if the kids feel safe, if you got substitutes, if we have coverage, if we have security guards, if everybody's on point, if everybody's like operations piece is down, okay, now we can really focus on instruction. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of point of view that I have always carried with me from like my first year as an administrator even until now, is just
Mhm.
really been that. So it was kind of a mixture of things of why I went into admin, uh, and why I stuck with it.
Mhm.
But a lot of those folks had a lot of those conversations really helped out in terms of just like the whole thing. Like, why not? Like, what's it
Yeah.
gonna hurt? When you could always go back and do something um, that you really like, and if you like it, guess what? You took your chance, and there you go.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, so you felt like, I mean, in a couple of situations, you've just had these kind of, I don't want to say mentors, or just really like people like seeing what you could offer,
Hmm.
and like put like kind of giving you that push and saying like,
Yeah.
yeah, you could do this, like think about this. And I think that's important too for us to hear, because I think a lot of us can kind of go back and relate to like, yeah, I think someone did tell me, like I know Christina was that for me when I was like, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go being an administrator and leave, being a counselor. And it was like a big kind of back and forth. But I think it's important to think about those people, and also us, like who do we see
Hmm.
on our sites, or who do we,
Mhm,
want to empower to have these like thoughts around what more can you do. And when you said like increase your sphere of influence, because I think that's huge. And a lot of us want to really make some of those changes, which is like, and this might actually go together. So I kind of want to like tell us like more about what you're doing now, but also just kind of what led you to leave Oakland and come back to San Diego. And Christina and I talk a lot about just being equity focused, but also like thinking about educational justice. Like you said, like really thinking about, what we have the capacity to do at our school sites, and then even working at the district, like how can we, really push forward that change that we know we need, for our Black and brown students, like even like what you brought up with the program at Tech. So tell us more about that, and however you want to start.
Yeah. So we'll start off like kind of back at Oakland Tech real quick though.
Mm-hmm.
What led me to
Mm-hmm.
choose to kind of come back to San Diego. So, we talk about Paideia, which was a struggle. Just for context as well, the last, I forgot what year it was, 2015, 16 maybe, there was a huge measure that passed in Oakland, the Measure N grant, which really provided a lot, and I mean a lot of funding for school sites to increase and put a priority on pathways, on career
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
technical education
right.
pathways.
Yep.
We had a superintendent at the time who was probably there for like less than a year, I think, but nonetheless, that was the key focus. And when we were, about that grant, it was like, hey, that's priority, and we got this money, and this is priority. So working on master schedules, working on out getting a big chunk of money of the budget of the school, I carry these two values, not values, but I see these things, these two documents as moral documents. And some folks have said, right, like I can look at a master schedule
Mm-hmm.
and I can look at your budget and I can tell you where your values lie as a school,
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yes.
and that's tough. And
Mm-hmm.
people don't seem to understand that piece.
Mm-hmm.
So I was given the job to say, hey, okay, let's carry this grant out and increase pathways. But there was something in the middle of the road that's going to prevent us from doing this, which was I can't put pathways as a priority because Paideia ruled the master schedule. They were scheduled first. That 3 hour block in senior year, boom, done.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, those 60 kids now dictated what all these other classes can do
Right, right,
in class.
right,
And then it
right.
trickles down.
Yeah.
It trickles down to like my ninth graders who I couldn't even offer retention classes or anything
Your
else to
ninth
catch them
graders,
up.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it really trickles down to the whole thing. So I was told, make it happen. Sure. And at that time, man, I'm like social justice warrior. I hate that phrase, but back then that's what you thought, right? Like I'm gonna do it. I don't care. I
Mm-hmm.
put my hand to the fire. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because we're learning, you feel me? Like we're just like, okay, like we're new in this, let's just get it done. And then the more you
Yeah.
do it, the more you realize, like, oh shit, like,
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, what am I doing here?
So I think so. In hindsight, it's one of the things. Everyone will teach you to be a social justice leader and to give you the
Mm-hmm.
vocabulary and give you that confidence to think that you can change something within your scope of influence or your sphere of influence. And you really your ego is really fed by that, and you really are driven
Yeah.
to do something. But what they don't teach you is how to maneuver that politically
Mm,
and what to really like like they don't teach you where the mines are in the minefield. They'll
mm,
prepare you and they think you're invulnerable, like, go out there, and you're like, "Sure, I'll get blown up here and there, I'll take some hits, fine, I'm still gonna make it because that's what I'm gonna do." But they don't teach you, like, you're not really gonna survive this if you don't tread carefully." And that's kinda what happened, like, so, I remember this one PTA meeting where I had to propose, and I didn't even make a decision, I just said, "Look, y'all, this is where we're stuck. I
mm,
can't finish this part of the job in terms of master scheduling my 10th grade students for all, like, 90% of the school and pathways, because this is a master schedule problem." I even presented it as a technical problem, not a
mm,
moral, racial, nothing. It was just a technical problem. But again, these white parents knew what's up and
mhm.
they knew what was happening. And now all of a sudden they built this narrative of, well, Jose's anti Paideia, anti white, and now it's this, and he's going to destroy everything. And that's kind of like
Yeah.
in a nutshell, like that was kind of the narrative that was building for a while. Once I was my focus is here, and it was not that I was anti anything. It was just my priorities are now pathway students. My priorities is to increase these graduation rates for the kids who need
Right.
it the most and support. But again, like you only have a certain amount of time, and I'm sorry, y'all. Like something's got to give.
Mhm,
And I think that was a struggle for me in the last 2 years. There, it was a struggle. I was being told by my superiors, get it done.
mhm.
I was having trouble with my co-principal who was very timid because politically they didn't want to be as in the forefront as I was.
Right.
And so that even had some tension. You had and by the way, like Paideia was like 20 something year third institution, like institutions there, like these folks, they know that they're teaching the almost like kids of the parents that they taught back in the day. Like so it's a very like they had a stronghold on that community for a very long time. And politically I just didn't know what else to do,
Mhm.
especially when your bosses are telling you like keep going, keep going, keep going. Um, and in Oakland at the time, what was it, 2016? That was like the election, right, with Trump. Like it
I
was be
think
leading up to,
yeah,
right?
probably, but I was like, probably, like, I
Yeah,
blocked that
trying to
time
think of
out
the
of
time
my.
because I remember it wasn't just the school side. I was like, man, this is like it was nationwide. It was like this whole political climate, right? And
Oh
people were
yeah, it
being
was. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So you add all that to it as well, and you
Right.
have these white neoliberal folks who with Black Lives Matter signs on their homes
Hmm.
in Rockridge
Hmm.
coming to tech telling me that they don't want their kids being mixed with those kind of kids.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like it was like the weirdest time for me because I was like, and it was eye opening for me also to hear because that was the piece that kind of I became disillusioned with them all. I was like,
Right.
I now when I reflect back, I call them like as long as, like, hey, I'm all for
Mhm.
anti-racism. I'm all for
As long
integration of all
as.
kinds, as long as it doesn't affect my kids' chances to
Hmm.
go
Mhm.
to college, or
Mhm.
even with
Hmm.
teachers, right? Like, hey, I
Yeah.
will teach any kid as long as
As
I don't
long
have
as.
to stay after and help them out.
Hmm.
And so when I think about Oakland back then, like I really have that term ingrained in my mind with all those folks. And you know they were all about equity, they were all about, you know, equitable practice, and they had all the vocabulary because it was
Hmm.
Oakland and that's what they learned, everybody there. But in those meetings, yeah, man, there were nasty meetings that I had to, like, I felt like I was high out to dry, and my superior, well, I don't know, my boss at the time was behind it, like not saying a damn thing. And
Yeah.
I pissed off the main Paideia teacher, and there were like articles written about me of how I was going to destroy the school, and there were private parties held with private newsletters that I was informed about, like this was happening, about how they need to get me out. And what really did it for me, honestly, like when I was like, you know what, I'm done with all this, at least in this school and what was going on, is when my boss told me that I had to go apologize to her. Like I was
Oh,
told,
oh my gosh. Sorry, go ahead. It's
yeah,
just
no,
like
it's cool.
no, I mean
It's
like just connecting back to like, yeah, I mean oftentimes like because I have a similar situation of being put in a position that I had to apologize for something. But go ahead because it also has like a this parallel to to the beginning of your story when you were put in a room by the seven other or six
mhm,
other teachers and at least they were telling you to your face that room, but now you're being in a
yeah.
position where people were not saying it to your face, but behind and then making you still have to apologize for your
Mhm.
approach.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, you're right. I was doing my job, and that's how I felt like. I was like,
Mhm.
"You guys entrusted me to do this, and I'm gonna see it through." But now you're telling me that we have to stop. I have to take a, you know, seat back now, and now I have to go apologize to these people. But
Yeah.
they're the ones dragging my name through the mud. They're the ones
Mhm.
who are doing all the hit pieces on me. Like, y'all, like
Mhm.
I'm just doing my job here. Like, what's going on? And
Right.
I think that's just kind of where I really was like all the hustling and all the whatever you want to call it, that hustle culture that, you know, I was
Mhm.
ingrained in before, like all that, what did it amount to? Like not burning myself out because I can still do all that, but who's there to get my, you know, have my back when it really comes, when time comes, when push comes to shove, like who really has my back in that? And
Yeah.
there were
That
plenty of
that's
meetings with
real.
that.
That's super real. And
Yeah.
you know what? I didn't leave Skyline or the I didn't leave Skyline that last time I was there because of simply that the job was overwhelming. Like I knew the job was overwhelming.
Mhm.
Mhm.
The main reason why I left was because I was not getting the support.
Yeah.
For the support that you needed.
The support that I
Because
needed.
in some
Or
ways, I
even
feel
asked
like
for.
yeah, because I feel like sometimes they think they're like, oh, but we are supporting you. We're giving you this money and we're giving you this extra person and we're giving you this. And we're like, you know, answering complaints. But like, it's like, well, no, what the
Yeah, it's like,
support,
oh
I
yeah,
need something else. That's not what
like
I need.
we're giving you this co-partner.
Mm.
Yeah, a co-partner that had zero experience in the secondary world.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, yeah, that was a very don't get me started. And
Well, that's what you were saying, Christina, right? Like we really aligned ourselves there
Mhm.
because we were kind of going through similar
yes,
situations, and we're like, wait,
yes.
we're doing our job, we're supposed to be about it, and we're doing it. It's all, you know,
Mhm.
action oriented, let's get this thing done. But then we're not being supported, and we're being told all these other stories. Like it was just very disheartening for us, and at least for
Yeah.
myself, it was just very disheartening. And I was like, then what the heck have y'all been telling me to do all these years? Like what was I
Yeah.
supposed to do then?
Mhm.
And I just didn't sit well with just trying to be like a puppet and
Mhm.
just be like, well, fine, and I'll be principal as long as I don't piss off these group of people, you know. And it was just really sad, and there was just a lot of things I brought up, and I just knew that oh my god, I forgot the theorist who read that. Like, you know, once you push back on a system, the system will push back even harder. And I was like, I can't, like for my own
Yeah.
sanity, I couldn't
Yeah.
do it. It was affecting my relationships with
Mhm.
everybody, like
Mm.
personal relations with everybody. I was like, I just can't. Like I need something. So, um, my wife and I. we decided to move to San Diego. Her family had just moved to Baja California within like an hour of the border, and an opportunity arose. Well, actually, no, not an opportunity arose. We started looking for places to live first, and I was like, I'll find a job no matter what. Like, I'll be whatever.
Yeah,
So we
I
actually,
remember that. We were at
yeah,
Shop Bar.
that's right, that's right.
We were at Shop Bar, and you're like, yeah, we ended up buying like this house, and we're getting it made.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, that's what's up. And then I was like, so where are you gonna work? And you're like, I don't know, but I'm gonna find a job.
And
I'm
yeah,
gonna
it's
find one.
and it was interesting. I mean, it was a eye opening experience for me because I'm thinking like, hey, I know all the skills that I have being at
Mm-hmm.
Oakland Tech, and you're not just a principal. Like, it was an open campus of like 2,000 students with two campuses,
Mhm,
so it was insane. Uh, so I had a lot of skills, and I was like, I got this. I'll get
Mm-hmm.
a job easily.
Yeah.
yeah, for
Um,
real.
and honestly, like, no, it was very different. San Diego, I've
Mm,
told people since I got here, it's like 5 to 7 years behind Oakland in the Bay Area politically. Like, we're talking about pronouns finally. Like last year, we just started talking about
yeah.
that, and people still have a problem with it.
Yeah.
So there is like San Diego was tough. Like, I remember my last 2 years, I was kind of be somewhat rebellious too. So I actually grew out my hair. So I had like really long hair, and I even had it like up to a ponytail even.
No
Mm-hmm.
kidding.
Before I left Cuisine, I saw that. But when I came down to San Diego, I knew I had to change my appearance. Like, I had to cut my hair.
Wow.
That I knew that there at the time, I thought San Diego was very conservative still,
Mm-hmm.
and for the most part they were, because
Mm-hmm.
immediately as soon as I walked into the room of like panels for being principals of certain schools for certain districts, I will guarantee at least 9 out of 10 of them, somebody had made a comment of how young I
Yeah.
immediately. You have my resume, you got all this stuff,
Yeah.
but and the fact that like in Oakland, I was like, I just learned how to just suit up, right? So I always had like nice ass suits everywhere, and I would come to San Diego, and like people would just be coming in like jeans and a blazer, and I'm like, nah, man. Like, even now, like we had an operations meeting like a month ago, and I was still like best dressed there, like this like turquoise suit, and everybody's like, damn, dude. And I'm like, why are you wearing flip flops, dude? It's like you're a principal. Like, what? I know it's San Diego, man, but can you at least whatever. Don't get me started on Crocs and cargo shorts. That's a whole different podcast. All right.
I'm like,
But
I just
but
bought a first pair of Crocs.
Oh, we
oh,
don't. Oh,
okay,
okay.
that's a
So
separate
yeah,
thing.
no. So where? So wait. So when you get to San Diego, are you in the job now that you got when you moved over there, or like,
I
it's
am.
like, what are you doing now? Like, tell us about
Yeah.
that.
So on my 10th interview, uh, I remember clearly. It was on my 10th interview. I interviewed for this job. It was a human resources officer
Hmm.
uh, for San Diego Unified. They, being a K through 12 district, 100,000 students, um, they didn't necessarily. They've always had like different areas geographically to kind of have
Mm-hmm.
area superintendents.
Mm-hmm.
But in 2018, they having like a high school network. High school
Okay.
principals, they were finally being heard and said, yeah, you can't treat high schools the same like elementary and middle schools. Funding,
Mhm,
just problems are very different.
Mm-hmm.
mhm,
So they created a high school network with their own like area superintendent, and they were looking for a human resources officer with some high school experience, and I was like, great. I think what really did it for me was my director uh, I think she was a year younger than me, and I was like, oh, it's the first time that nobody's even saying anything about like how young I look. Like, somebody actually complimented like my suit, and I was like, run somewhat of, maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know, but whatever it is, I landed in this role. My high school experience. So I've been in this role for 4 years. Uh, it supports approximately 30 school sites, varying from our largest school. We had like over 3,000 students. So I handle the high schools, atypical, alternative sites, like 6 to 12 music program, all that kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I am the point of contact on operations, I would say, for a lot of principals. If they have union issues, labor issues, a lot of things, like, they will contact me and ask me for support and writing people up, or if they can or not, discipline, like, you name it, it runs the gamut on all that.
Yeah.
But it's been, it's interesting. I only applied for it honestly because I was like, I'm so tired of the principal stuff because they're not giving it to me because of the way I look.
Yeah.
Um, but
mhm,
maybe I should learn about the system of San Diego
Mm-hmm.
and just get the culture and get aware of it, and and then if I want to again
Mm-hmm.
take an opportunity, can always go back to the school site.
Yeah, for
mhm,
sure.
mhm, mhm.
Um, and unfortunately, like, so now I'm in this job where And I'll say this, even my bosses are listening, like nobody wants my job. Like I've offered my colleagues who have like my other HR officers in their areas. I'm like, hey, I think wait, it's my fourth year, so it's up to $4,000. I'm like, hey, I'll give you $4,000 to switch areas with me for 1 year. I'll take the high schools back, and they're like, nope, nobody wants my job here because they think high schools are insane. Uh,
Mm,
but in all, like it's a lot more. But if you are efficient and you learn about operations, it's actually it's been pretty rewarding job.
in some ways now you're able to offer that support that you know, maybe didn't get as in some
Yes.
ways to the
Right.
principals at the high school level, because you're in a position where you're like, well, I could tell you these things, especially if they have issues around, you know, complaints or
Hmm.
write-ups or, you know, in the HR area, you're just like, well, let me tell you something. Like, let me give you
Yeah.
what you need and walk you through this. Cause I feel like
Yes.
sometimes like, you know, it's the assumption that, well, you're supposed to know, as opposed to like,
Yeah.
this can be hard every single time. So let me support that.
It's true. And yeah, thank you for even highlighting that. I work with over 30 principals and even their assistant principals, and it's been very interesting on seeing their development and where
Hmm.
their stages are at. And sometimes I've even told some of like the first year ones, I'm like, hey man, check your ego, dude. There's nothing about it. Like, ask for
Yeah.
help. You don't know what you're doing. I know you
Mhm,
don't know what
mhm.
you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, just stop. Because
Hmm.
like, stop like using the freaking thesaurus to write stuff. Like, it's okay. Like, text me. Like, it's just stop. Breathe. Just breathe, and I got you, and it's fine. Let me explain it to you this way, and they're
Hmm.
totally fine. Um, so it's been really helpful to see just the spectrum of folks, and like in their development as administrators.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's also been interesting on how administrators think of themselves over the last few years. I remember, like, I was
Mm.
always an operations person first. Again, like that, but for me, it was like the hierarchy of
Mhm.
needs, right? School clean, school safety, kids can then learn, right? Like let's
Mhm.
handle that. Um, but I've just also noticed in the background now, like where there's like instructional leaders, like their focus is on instruction, and they don't
Mhm.
bother so much with understanding the operations piece because they'll dump it to their office manager, classifies, or
Mm.
whoever else, and they have a tough time balancing everything out. And they're always like, I don't know why I can't get into classrooms. I'm always bogged down with safety. I'm always bogged down with this. And they're always reacting. And I always tell them, like, hey, dude, you need to take a deep breath.
That's
Like,
interesting. Yeah.
prevent this stuff. Like, this is how you get into rooms by making sure this stuff or your operations piece is set. If there's a
Hmm.
problem, teach your office staff how to at least calm it down for 30 minutes while you check out a class. Like, these are things that I've been able to
Hmm.
kind of get into, but I've really just stay in my lane.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm like,
Hmm.
don't get me into instruction. I don't want to do this stuff. It ain't my job. You got area soups for that. You guys do all this stuff. Again, remember, I was like, I'm not part of that hustle culture no more. I know my boundaries. I know my stuff. So here we are. But I do try to at least help them out and point them in the right direction, so that they don't burn
Yeah,
out.
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's a
Well,
good
I mean,
segue.
yes, I know you just said burnout, and so
And
what should
hustle culture. Yeah.
yes,
Hmm.
and boundaries.
And boundaries,
So
yes.
you're saying like a lot of our hashtag words there or buzzwords. So like Josue, like with all that you just said, like there you have to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So what's your form of self-care?
I like your favorite form.
My favorite for oh man, there's a lot. So for folks who know me, like I am, or like a Renaissance man. I am out there. I do a lot of the different things. Um, I think my favorite, well, I say the most impactful,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
that was the through line, is I did a yoga teacher training a
Mm.
few years ago. Um, I was, taking yoga and meditating for a little bit, and I was like, I want to know a little bit more about it to be a little bit more self-aware. So I did the whole 2 hour, 200-hour yoga teacher training
Wow.
program here in San Diego, and it really gave me the vocabulary and skills to do a couple of things. One is like be aware in the moment, like being just self-aware and understanding how I'm reacting to something.
Mm.
Like when somebody says something, or even when my name is said in a meeting, I used to perk up. I'm like, wait, what did they say? And I'm already I'm ready to go. I'm like, what? Um, but understand is like, okay, what do they mean? And just okay, fine, whatever. It's my problem or it's not. Let me see how I can figure that out. And that's really helped out a lot, especially with like the political nature of a central office
Mm.
administrators. Like, I get so upset on our educational system, like on a daily basis at work, and people make boneheaded decisions. Again, just because you got these titles don't mean, just because you got a title doesn't mean you're a good leader anyway. So
Mhm.
there, and people are making like hella cash off of kids, and they're doing all this stuff, and they don't know what they're doing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
plain and simple. They don't know what they're doing, and it can get very frustrating. But
Yeah.
again, it's just like taking a step back and like, this is right. I can't impact that. Like I can't be part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I just gotta go take care of myself. So the yoga teacher training thing has definitely been helpful for me to actually expand and do other things. So like, yeah, on a weekly basis, you'll see me like I will bike the bay. So it's like a little 25-mile loop here in San Diego Bay. That
Wow.
be biking everywhere. I bought a classic car a year ago, so I just be taking an engine apart, fixing it,
Well,
detailing
what
that.
kind of classic car?
Oh yeah, I got a 1962 Nova convertible. So
Dang,
it's
I like Novas.
everybody has a Nova story. It's great, man. Like all the car guys, I got my first Nova, this and that, and it's they only had a convertible in 62, 63. I was able to find this one
Wow.
in LA, and honestly, like, you'll find me on the weekends, like on car meetups and just talking to
That's
people about different
awesome.
things. Back to my mechanical engineering roots.
Yeah.
I told my dad,
You
I'm not an
full
engineer, but I got
circle.
yourself a classic car, full circle, dude. Yeah, my dad's like, okay, he's like, I get it. You're comfortable, you're safe now. And I think that was the thing of like with the immigrant parents, like, what you need to be doctor, lawyer, engineer. Because all in all, they just want to make sure that you're
Yeah.
able to take care of yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
my dad was able to see that after all these years, and even bought the classic car. And I'm like, yeah, you like to cruise in this car now, man? Like, what the heck? So um, it's been cool. The classic car thing, the yoga. My wife and I still go out dancing and go check out new restaurants everywhere. Um, and just you'll find me just doing whatever dang project I'm into now. Like during the pandemic, I became like a mixologist at home. I'm like, we're
I think we all did.
right. Like my bar's pretty expensive though, man. Like I think my wife's like a huge like gin, calls herself a gin intellectual. She has
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
I'm a gym
Okay.
person
you're
too.
All right, I'll connect you to Christina because yeah, she knows her gin for sure. But yeah, so we get into a
Awesome.
lot of different hobbies to kind of just wind it down and just again, there's
That's great. Yeah,
my life is my life. It's good, but I
hmm
can't overextend myself so much in that.
for sure. Thank you.
So, Josue, we want to wrap this up with our last question. We love asking our guests this question. So, what is that one song that gets you up the hill? So symbolically. So I want you to remember when like you're
Yeah.
about to face something at tech, like parents knocking on your door, whatever, a picket sign, something, because they're mad at what you're about to do with the master schedule. What's that one song you're like, this will hype me up so I could just go there and not call Frontline and say that I'm calling up sick. What's that one song?
Uh, at Tech, clearly it was
Or
actually.
just in general?
Oh no, it's different. You're right. When you said Tech, I was like, oh, I remember that one song. I used to play all the time.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
Spill
yeah,
that.
that's fine. That was a Down Rodeo by Rage Against the Machine. Uh,
Mm,
and that line that always just tell me like, these people ain't seen a brown skinned man since their grandparents bought one. And I was just like,
yeah, that's deep.
I'm just like, holy crap! Like, because it was on a mission. Like, just remember where I'm at. Like, as friendly as what they may seem, like, holy crap, their eyes are just bugging because of everything I'm gonna say right now. So that was like
Yeah,
going to battle kind of
yeah.
kind of jam. Lately though, it has been Come Down by Anderson .Paak. Drumming, beats. I again just love the music style, but just chilling and relaxing and just still upbeat. That gets me just happy, and I think that's a big difference of like um, how I can contribute
hmm
to education and all the people I support now, and what I was doing at Tech before. I was like, I got to battle for this, and I just think that I wouldn't be able to support folks if I was if I left education or do anything else. So I try
Yeah.
to still stay upbeat and just be positive for folks because I know what they're going through.
hmm
They're probably going through stuff similar to situations that I went through at Tech, and um,
hmm hmm
yeah, man, just can't hate. I just got now. I kind of just want to be that supportive role for folks, and just like
Yeah.
whatever you need. I kind of been through it. I've been working in school
hmm
since, oh crap, I'm dating myself. 99. I've been working since schools, and long time. But hopefully, I can lend some kind of advice or support for folks out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on this. I think like even
Yeah,
just what you
good
shared
putting it
throughout this
out.
podcast is going to support so many school leaders out there as well. Because I just think that right now there's so many of us that are experiencing different, I don't know it's different right now in schools. And so I think
It's very
like,
different.
there's a lot of educators out there that just need to hear these types of stories, but specifically our school leaders. So I just thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Yeah, no problem. If you guys want like the
So
happy
good.
hour version, like we can do that at a separate time. Like names included, we go all out. It's fine.
For sure. Thank you, Josue.
Good to see you, Josue.
Likewise, Christina. Really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.